and welcome to Peninsula Music Festival pre-festival discussion and announcements from my office at the Bina School of Music of Northwestern University. This is a very unusual time for me because it is my festival number 30. It's a very big date, and I wanted to make this festival special, in a way autobiographical. So I created a title for this festival, which is Victor's Musical Journeys. It doesn't mean that every concert and every piece of music will be related to my journeys, but some of it will. And as I look back to my upbringing and formative years in Soviet Union, as well as 41 and a half years living in the United States, I remember people who molded me into a musician and who followed me, or better say, whom I followed as a disciple through all those years. And so I decided to dedicate some of the concerts to my mentors. And of course, when I think about my mentors and dedicating concerts to some of them, I realize that the whole festival, or better say the whole of my life, I have to dedicate to my mother. Because my mother was the one who made me who I am in many, many ways, in more than ways than one. She was a wonderful lady, she was a wonderful mother, she was a very strong-willed lady, she was very organized, and she managed to make me look and act like her, to such extent that more and more of my relatives tells me, oh, you look more and more like your mother, and you act more and more like your mother. And I would say, it's good. Well, anyway, I don't want to waste too much time telling you about my mother's biography, but she was a wonderful pianist, and as many women of her generation, she could not make a career as a solo pianist, and so instead she simply became a housewife and started to look after my father and her 3 children. But her talent was absolutely astounding. In fact, when she graduated Kiev Conservatory, she was given bursary to go to Europe for continuous study, the same bursary as very famous Vladimir Horowitz received 3 years before her. Anyway, and so I think at a later day I may tell you more about my mother, but right now let's concentrate on what's coming into Peninsula Music Festival in August of 2015. So we're going to start with all Beethoven program, and that concert is dedicated to my father. And so Beethoven's music obviously was very close to me all through my formative years, but especially when my father came home from a trip abroad to Prague, where he accompanied David Oistrakh on his trip, and he brought home a very new gadget, which was a long playing record from Supraphone. Mm-hmm. And it was such an interesting new machine that my mother gave me some cash, 5 rubles actually, to go and buy long playing records. And so I did. I think I was 14 years of age at the time. And I remember buying Beethoven, Tchaikovsky, and Shostakovich. I thought those were the most famous composers. So I bought those long playing records, and one of them had Beethoven Fifth Symphony and Coriolan performed by Berlin Philharmonic Orchestra under direction of Wilhelm Furtwängler. And so those were my very first memories of how great orchestra is supposed to sound and how great musical Beethoven is supposed to sound. Therefore, I decided to start our festival with all Beethoven program, with Overture Coriolanus and the Fifth Symphony. Sandwiched between them will be Fourth Piano Concerto by Beethoven. And the reason why I've chosen that piece, because that was a graduation piece of my father. When he graduated what we call aspirantura, and here you call it graduate school, in Leningrad Conservatory. And that was his graduation concerto. Of course, I heard him playing or practicing this piece many times just at home at his instrument. And I really have very sentimental memories about my father practicing that piece. So the soloist whom I've chosen for this occasion is also a member of our Yampolsky family. His name is Pavel Gintov, and he already known to our public in Door County very well because he came to play Liszt Concerto No. 2 and Mozart Concerto No. 15. So Pavel Gintov will be a soloist for that program. Musically speaking, I don't think it's important for me to elaborate on the technological aspects of how Beethoven wrote Coriolanus or his Fifth Symphony or Fourth Piano Concerto, because all the pieces are very well known and very much loved. The only thing I could tell you, just from my point of view, that Beethoven's writing of all three works was nothing short of revolutionary, because you will not find any piece of music which would have such a content and moods, and also the construction, which I call compositional construction. It was all absolutely new, in the way shocking and revolutionary. This program I title Memories from My Childhood. So the pieces which we are going to be performing are pieces which I remember from very, very early childhood. The first one is Rossini's Overture to Barbara of Seville. I think it was probably year 1945 or 46 when I heard it on the radio, and somehow I started to try to play it on the piano with one finger, and I still love that piece for its very interesting mood. Of course, it's very classical and very transparent and harmonious and brilliant, but it has a little bit of this minor key melancholic overtone, which was part of my character from the childhood. So I somehow associated that piece with my own childhood. Then we're going to invite back our pianist Pavel Gintov to play Piano Concerto by Edvard Grieg. And again, Grieg was another composer who took my attention as a young child. My father often told me that Grieg possessed almost unbelievable gift of melody. In all his short piano works and all his Norwegian dances, he displayed very original gift of melody. And so I heard many times those short pieces by Grieg. And then, being a student in the Central High School, I remember my very first assignment is a chamber music, and that was to play sonata with my friend from the same grade. I think we both were in the 6th grade at the time, and we played violin sonata by Edvard Grieg in C minor. And so that was my first experience of being in the team. And then, of course, I started to play in a school orchestra, and one of the very first pieces I played in the orchestra was Suite from Peer Gynt by Edvard Grieg. So since I couldn't put all of this in my program, I've decided with a Grieg piano concerto performed by Pavel Gintev. The symphony which I've chosen for that concert, called Winter Dreams, it's the first symphony by Peter Ilyich Tchaikovsky, and again I've chosen it because that was the first symphony I played in a school orchestra. Maybe a little bit later I would call it a year 1959 or 59. I was like 16 and a half years old. But that symphony brings back my very first experience of being a part of first violin section in the orchestra and playing orchestral music. And by that time I was already in the junior college of music, so there are a lot of details I could tell you about my behavior as a teenager, but perhaps some other time. Hollywood Rhapsody. And this program and this evening will be a departure from my narration, because it is purely American, and it will be conducted by David Rowe, who is a young conductor from New Jersey, who appeared already with Peninsula Music Festival, conducting music in memory of Marvin Hamlisch. So this time he is bringing all scores with him, and he created a program of the great music from Hollywood, from various movies. David, perhaps for those of you who don't know, was my student at Northwestern University many years ago, and he got his master's degree in symphonic conducting from me. And I'm looking forward to have him back. He is what I call an international feature of our festival. This is something which, again, not many of you listeners know, that our festival is a truly international festival. Starting with me being a product of Soviet Union and born in Kyrgyzstan, and our first soloist, Pavel Gintev, is from Kiev, from Ukraine. And now we're going to have David Rowe, who is from Great Britain and went to University of Manchester. Now we're moving to the second week